Hello, everybody. Let's jump into the textbook chapters 5 and 6. This week is an interesting week, not quite as interesting as week 2, in my opinion, but still interesting nonetheless. And this week, what we're going to be talking about is kind of subcultures and how they influence market behavior. So it's still very interesting, still related to the cohorts and the demographic marketing that we talked about in week 2. But let's talk about what some of these things are, and let's just jump into it a little bit. What's a subculture? Well, it's just a segment of a larger culture. They share similar types of patterns of behaviors. This can be ethnic, it can be religious, it can be, these are what our subcultures look like. So let's talk about some of our cultures. Let's talk about African American consumers. If I can speak today, that'd be fantastic. African American consumers. What are some of the features that characterize our African American consumers? Well, they are a substantial ethnic group. They have 14% of the population. A lot of these African American consumers are younger. They unfortunately have typically lower incomes than if we look at a broader section of the population. That's not to say that they don't also represent all of those social classes that we looked at in week 2, but they tend to be that. They have considerable contributions, right? They're 1.2 trillion in spending power. So that's considerable. And with 14% and 1.2 trillion in spending, it makes them an incredibly important consumer base when we're marketing specific types of goods toward specific cultures. Okay. What about how are they spending? Well, they spend a lot in store. They love to shop in store. We do see more and more online shopping, but they do continue to go to these brick and mortar stores. 52%, that's an incredible number. 52% consider in-store shopping relaxing. So that is a different shift maybe from some of the other groups that we'll talk about today. 26% as a whole of the population considers in-store shopping relaxing. So that is a marked difference from what we would find. So that in-store, that POP, that point of purchase marketing towards these African-American consumers is a significant opportunity. They're spending more times in malls, more times in stores. All right. What about our Hispanic consumers? This is the largest and fastest growing ethnic subculture in the United States. That shouldn't be a surprise, but we see the number of bilingual products. Now, what is Hispanic? That often gets very confusing, Hispanic, Latino, all these sort of things. But let's talk about it. They have a variety of backgrounds. They could be Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, and they have Spanish language in common, and not as the type of Spanish language you would perhaps find in Spain, but more of a Mexican Spanish that they would speak. They tend to be over-indexed, as we would call it, as Roman Catholics. So they share their religious background. They have a strong appeal in Spanish language media. So we see a lot of that and their influences there. They have even more buying power. They have 2.5 trillion in buying power. So it is a necessity for brands to figure out how they can cross-market their items for the Hispanic market. That may be that they have to advertise and create bilingual alternatives or figure out the best ways that it is adapted to the Hispanic market, but they are a must for many, many brands. They make up 20% of the U.S. population. They are becoming more influential and affluent. What about our Asian consumers? Well, they're the most diverse, right? When we think about the number of different nationalities and languages and religions that comprise the Asian culture. It's really an interesting, there's an Asian-led content movement, if you will, happening over the last few years. They are highly technological. They are more likely to cut the cord than any other subculture is. They subscribe to more streaming services. So if you want to reach them, that's how you're most likely to reach them, instead of a traditional television channel, some sort of cable or something like that. You would need to reach and advertise to them through these streaming services. What about Native American? They have been disproportionately impacted by COVID. They're one of the smallest ethnic subpopulations in the U.S. It's quite interesting their news consumption is increasing quite a bit. And particularly among these 18 to 34, there's this real shift towards wanting to protect, save, and promote their particular culture. So you'll see this is a huge shift with this. And we've seen that a lot in TikTok as well, hashtag native TikTok, things like that. So there's this shift with the younger generation for having their moment and making sure that they're seen and heard and have representative products and services. What about our Asian Indian consumers? Well, this is quite interesting because they are so broad, as broad as you may think Asian consumers are, or the different types of tribal communities that are out there. The Asian Indian consumers have them beat. They have 22 official languages in this subculture, but there are over 120 different dialects spoken. They are split into 28 states and 8 union territories. It is remarkable. Look in your book and see all of the different things that this encompasses. It's quite broad. Let's see here. These Indian consumers, 43% are shown advertising with culturally relevant. They want to see people who look and think and act like them in advertising. That is something that is near and dear to them. So if you're wanting to reach the Asian Indian consumers, you need to be able to be compelling with Asian Indian spokespersons as well. All right, 51% of them prefer ads in their own language to ads in English. So you'll have to create content that has that duality to it. So interesting. Okay, what about some of the things that they love? Let's dig down a little further, since they are such a broad group here. They love cricket, so that's unifying across all of those 120 dialects of different languages. They have a passion point for this, and the passion and the draw of this particular sport cannot be underestimated. It is a huge deal, and even if they're here in the U.S. As we're speaking of these consumers, that is still a very significant draw for them. So finding a way to incorporate that, finding those opportunities to advertise to them and have those tie-ins is very important. What about our Arab American consumers? They are, since 2000, we've seen them be the first generation of these Arab consumers here in the United States, and they're very affluent. They are incredibly smart. They're fluent. They're well educated. They have high revenue. They tend to be very entrepreneurial. They have a very specific, products and food that they have. What are the Arab American consumers? Where are they from? There are 22 different Arabic-speaking countries, and they're from all of these sort of areas, right? We've got Morocco and Algeria, all the way down to Somalia and all the way over to Syria and Iraq. It's in Oman. So very different cultures mixing in, and these are our Arab consumers. They have varying cultural practices and backgrounds, but they generalized have an Arab identity, if you will. What about regional subcultures? If you've ever visited somewhere like New York and you've visited Little Italy, I did grad school in Boston, and Chinatown in Boston was definitely one of my faves. Some of the best Chinese food I've had. You see this in a lot of different places. It's particularly in larger cities. They have these regional subcultures within these sort of cities. So, and they tend to, individuals of those specific cultural backgrounds tend to group and live and work together in these sort of regional subcultures. Okay, what do we think? We're going to do a shift here as we sort of jump into chapter 6 a little bit. Let's talk about our household types. I mentioned maybe 1 or 2 lectures ago about how the number of households that they're merging, and they're having this real interesting shift that we haven't seen as housing becomes more expensive. So let's think about what a household is. Okay, a family households 2 or more unrelated people that live together in a unit. Okay, so it could be a husband and wife, a husband and husband, a wife. It could be roommates. These are they're related in some way. So I suppose roommate wouldn't necessarily be, unless you consider that person a partner, a life partner specifically. Okay, so that is it. You can have maybe you have a parent and child, or, you know, a parent and maybe an adult child. We see that as well. What about these non-family households? These are one or more unrelated individuals. That's where your roommates come in. So we can think about what that might look like. And then family households, these are this primary mechanism by the cultural and social class values are defined. Okay, they are passed down, they are learned, they are inherent. And we get those predominantly from that family household where they are two or more related persons living together. Okay. Okay. What about the family decision process? So how do we make these decisions in our family? Okay. So, you know, who buys who, you know, sometimes we have this idea, and one of the things that's confusing for marketers is the customer and the consumer. Who's the customer and the consumer? You know, a lot of people use those terms interchangeably, but they're not. Customer is the purchase who buys, the consumer is the person who actually ends up consuming the service or product. Very different. If you're buying baby formula, the consumer is the baby, the customer is the parent. So that is the kind of the difference there. So family decision making, this is a consideration of question of who buys, who decides, who uses. So we have this idea, this influencer, this buying influencer, this customer, and this consumer. So, but we're just shuffling it. The textbook just shuffles it in a little bit of different way. But if you take a different class from me, you're going to hear me refer to it as customer and consumer. All right. So let's see here. Let's talk about that a little bit. The roles of the households and children and how we socialize this. So consumer socialization, it's how do we teach our children how to buy and purchase and become consumers? What do we do? So we model it. We show them the ability to save. We show them how to spend. And so there's this different stages that we're going to show here in just a second of how children go through and learn how to become consumers. There is an ethical problem with marketing to consumers. And we see this and hear this all the time because there's this idea that they lack context and they lacked the capacity, if you will, to be able to make informed decisions on their own. And so this, you know, we saw this with the little e-cigarettes, right? They were marketing to children because of their bubble gum and their bright flavor, you know, their bright colors and their childlike flavors and things like that. So they're saying that that was unethical and encouraged, you know, some sort of an unethical, negative habit forming substance. And we see this photo here of the child picking up the Cinnamon Toast Crunch, which, by the way, my son loves. But how does that encourage these sort of behaviors over a long period of time that may, you know, lead to unhealthy eating habits? So this ethical concerns in marketing for children is not something that's going to be resolved in our class. It is, but it is somewhat challenging for sure. Okay, what are these 5 stages that children go through to learn to be a consumer? Number 1, they observe, right? They watch their parents. You know, how are they doing things? What are they, you know, they're buying things at stores. They're looking at the bright colors. They're recalling certain items. You'll see children that are about 1.5 years old. They know that something, if they like it, they'll recall the packaging of it and they'll grab it. So that is this sort of observing. Okay. Stage 2, making requests. This is about 2 years old, and this is when they start requesting items, right? They may want the certain kind of cookies. They may want the certain kind of ice cream. I want more of that. I want this. I want that. I want to say this is the making request stage. So very interesting there. Stage 3. This is where they make the selections. You start to see the little carts in the store. They are about 3.5 to 5. They're shopping around. They're making their own selections. You may have to put some of them back, but this is kind of a stage where children are beginning to make some of their own selections. Stage 4, making assisted purchases, right? So this is where maybe we have an allowance, and maybe a parent is given money. Maybe they've been given money for birthday or something. And this is where the parent is helping them make that purchase, helping them make good choices, hopefully. If they've got $5, how are they going to spend it in the toy aisle, so to speak? Okay. Stage 5. This is where they make a purchase without a parent to oversee it. You can send your kiddo at a certain age into the store with money. I have a funny story on this one. My son was probably, I imagine he was in intermediate school, so probably maybe maybe younger than that, fourth or fifth grade, somewhere around there. And he had gone in one morning. We were taking him to school, and I said, "Okay, go in and get yourself a dozen donut holes and a chocolate milk, and get me a dozen donut holes and probably a Diet Dr. Pepper." And I said, and here's a $10 bill. And in my mind, I had thought, okay, the donut holes at the time probably $1.50 a piece. That's $3. The chocolate milk's a couple bucks, the drink's a couple of bucks, so that's four. We're like at $7 or something. And he comes back out. I'm like, well, wait, where's the change? And he said, I tipped him. And I said, you tipped the donut guy? And he said, yeah, I told him to keep the change. And I said, oh, okay. So, that was an opportunity to have a conversation about, all those sorts of things. And I didn't mind it, but it was quite funny because I thought I was going to have some change for a soda later on at work. But okay, so let's talk about some of these ethical issues that do arrive. Like I said before, the ability of younger children to process information, the capacity, how are they able to discern what is good and bad, and what is marketing that is trying to help them make poor decisions in the long run. So that is part of the issue there. Okay, let's talk about these stages of household life. That's a lot to say, but it's really quite interesting. So we've got this is a scale that people use when we start talking about how we're breaking things down. So single one, they're under 35, they live alone, they're younger, they have limited expenses. What about we've got young couples, no children, right? Young couples, generally working. I called them in a previous lecture because typically you would use the word DINKs, dual income, no kids. Now, DINKs do not necessarily need to be younger. That's the difference here. You could be an empty nester, dual income, no kids at the home, or you could be you could be in any stage. But this tends to be under 35 with no children. Okay, full nest one. These are married couples, typically younger, under 35, with young children. A lot of times we see the wife who does not work. This results in a reduction of the family income. This is our stay-at-home mom, full nest one, on the younger side. What about single parent one? Well, we use that one again to define that under 35. They typically are single, living with one or more children. Oftentimes, this is denoted by a female. Finances tend to be very tight. Okay, what about our middle-aged singles? Now we're veering into this 35 plus category. Middle-aged single, live alone. Sometimes they have a higher income. This is that 35 to 64. They could be single for a number of reasons. Perhaps they never got married. Perhaps they're divorced, widowed. They could be, a number of different reasons why they are considered middle-aged and single. Okay, empty nest one. This is our middle-aged 35 to 64 couples with no children living at home. They have dual careers. This is, another place where we would do that broader term of dual income, no kids, a DINK. They have dual careers with busy lifestyles. They tend to take expensive vacations. But this is, this could be a situation where the kids are off at college. That's where I'm at now, right? I'm an empty nest one at the moment. Okay. He just finished freshman year. So that's what I am. All right. What about this one that we are starting to see, or this delayed full nest one? These are couples 35 to 64 with young children. I had a friend recently, and he is in his late 40s, and he had a surprise, and wife is pregnant, and he is definitely in this delayed full nest one, or will be shortly as soon as she has the child, but they have another younger one at home. So definitely a delayed full nest one there. All right, full nest two. This is 35 to 64 with parents with children living at home. So if you've got younger siblings and they are still living at home, your parents are full nest two, probably. Okay, what about single parent two? This is a often these are those who middle-aged 35 to 64. They are singles with children who live with them. This could have been a lifestyle choice. We see this a lot. Individuals reach late 30s, 40s, and they decide, oh, I really do want to have children. I may not have a partner, but I don't have to. I can do this on my own. All right. So what about empty nest too? Older couples over 64 without children living in their household. That would, of course, be something like my parents. They're older than 64. They don't have children living in their household, and they definitely have a lot of time on their hands. I know from personal experience. So there you go. All right. And then finally, older single. Those individuals who are older over 64, they don't live, they can live alone, or they may have a roommate. Sometimes they have a unique needs for housing and healthcare and things like that. But a lot of times they're very healthy, and we see, olders, singles type vacations where they are meeting up and having a lot of fun and going together. So that is our week 3, pretty quick and all of that. And definitely make sure that you are reading chapters 4 and 5 so that you're able to get even more context, because I went ahead and kept that brief, but there is a lot of really good information in those 2 chapters, and I don't want you to miss out on that, but I wanted to keep this to just the salient points this week. I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.